How's it going, everybody? You know who it is. My name is Sun Wu and I make beats. And today I'm going to compare the minilogue OG with the minilogue XD. Let's do it. Bang, bang. Alright, let's start with the very obvious differences. On the minilogue XD, you have a third oscillator, which is digital. On this digital oscillator, you can load different engines, for example, FM, wavetable, different types of noise, and all kinds of other things. I didn't particularly like it when I had the XD because the way you edit those synthesizer engines is mostly via the menu. So you gotta go in the edit menu, program menu, then press these buttons and turn some values and such. So there is not a lot of editing of that third oscillator engine on the panel. And instead of the third oscillator on the minilogue OG, we only have this little noise knob here. In addition to that, another thing the XD has over the minilogue OG is the fact that it has 16 step sequencer buttons versus 8 step sequencer buttons. The sequences on the OG are still 16 steps long, but you access step 9 to 16 via pressing this button. So you switch between 1 to 8 and 9 to 16. So I don't really care about that fact, but one thing that makes the XD's step sequencer better than the OG's is the fact that not only can you enter notes on a per step basis by holding down the note and then playing on your keyboard. On the XD, you can also edit parameters that way, which is not possible on the OG. On the OG, you have to record those movements manually. And while we're at these buttons here, let's talk about the voice modes, which on the OG are very prominently featured and accessible via these buttons right here, whereas on the XD, you can access them with a little switch. But when it comes to the voice modes, I think the OG actually has the upper hand, and I'm going to show you why. We're going to start in poly mode, which means I can play up to 4 notes. And now when I hold a chord and turn up the voice mode depth, you are going to hear inversions of that chord. This is a super cool feature, and you can also record this voice mode depth into your sequencer and it sends out MIDI CC and receives it. Now, when I am in poly mode on the minilogue XD, if I turn up the voice mode depth there, it will turn into the duophonic mode instead of inverting my chords. And it will sound like this. So by splitting these two voice modes in 2 separate categories, you get another option for the modulation with the voice mode depth, which I think is a really great option actually, and I probably would miss it if I had the minilogue XD. Furthermore, the OG has a mono mode which is missing on the XD, and this mono mode also has a cool voice mode depth feature, which is introducing sub-oscillators. As you can hear, also very useful features if you want to play some bass lines or something on the OG. Yeah, again, that's missing in the minilogue XD. So another plus point for the OG there. And also there is a delay mode and a sidechain mode, which I haven't used that much, but I think the delay mode could also be useful. Basically, it's using the 4 oscillators cascading, so it's repeating what you played with the first oscillator with the other 3. And it has the sidechain mode, which means that the first note you play will be lowering in volume once you play another note. Okay, first I have to turn up the voice mode depth because that determines by how much the first note is lowered. And these were the voice modes. As you can see, there are quite a lot of differences in between the two units. I would say this round definitely goes to the OG. And now let's get to the EG. The envelope generator on the two devices is different in that the Minilogue XD only has an attack decay envelope, whereas the OG has a full ADSR. And although both devices have 3 possible destinations that can be addressed by the envelope generator, the way they are implemented is quite different. On the Minilogue XD, you can only address one single destination at any given time, and that destination is chosen by the little switch. You can either address the pitch of both oscillators together, the pitch of the second oscillator only, or you can address the cutoff frequency of the filter. Whereas on the Minilogue OG, you can affect all 3 destinations at the same time, and 2 of them even to varying degrees of intensity because they have dedicated knobs. One of them is the pitch of VCO2, which can be regulated right here, the filter cutoff frequency, which has a knob right here, and the third destination, which is different to the Minilogue XD, whereas the Minilogue XD can modulate the overall pitch of the oscillators, the Minilogue OG instead can modulate the LFO with your envelope generator, and it can either modulate the rate of the LFO or the intensity of the LFO. And I think this is much cooler than just being able to modulate the overall pitch with your envelope generator, because it makes for more subtle and interesting sound design, in my opinion. So again, another point for the Minilogue OG when it comes to the envelope generator and its modulation options. And our next topic is the filter section, which probably is the most criticized aspect of the Minilogue OG. And I'm going to quickly show you why. It's because if you crank up the resonance, you will lose volume and bass in your sound. So I'm going to quickly twiddle with that. I can definitely see how that is a problem to some people. I just take it as it is, and if I want more bass, I'll use the mono mode and the sub oscillators, or I just don't crank up the resonance as much. But at least in my opinion, it makes the synth unique in some way, so I just accept it as it is. You're okay, Minilogue. Now, the Minilogue XD doesn't have this problem because this one came out earlier and people criticized it for it, so they changed up the filter in the XD, and that's that. It doesn't lose bass, it doesn't lose volume, so yeah, you might give a point to the Minilogue XD right there, but then there are other cool features in the OG that more than make up for it, in my opinion. Whereas in the XD, you only have one type of filter. On the Minilogue OG, you have 2 different flavors of filter. 4-pole, as it also is in the XD, makes the volume of the higher frequencies drop off quicker. And 2-pole lets more of those high frequencies through, and I think it's nice to have this option for sound design because sometimes you don't want as harsh of a drop-off of frequencies, so I welcome this addition. Now, the Minilogue XD has one thing that the OG doesn't have, which is filter overdrive, which you can select via that little switch. You can either have it at 0, 50% or 100%. That is a feature I wish the Minilogue OG had. but it doesn't matter. And also the minilogue OG has something else in its place, which is velocity tracking for the filter, which the minilogue XD is lacking, and I think it's an amazing feature to make for more organic patches and more nuanced playing option for people who can play the piano. That will be interesting. What this basically means is that the harder you hit a note, the more the filter cutoff will go up, and the less hard you hit the note, the lower the filter will be. And I'm going to quickly demonstrate it. I'm going to play the same note at different velocities. So, although you are playing the exact same note, the velocity switching the filter like that, I think, makes for a lot more interesting synth patches. And it's one of the reasons I like making patches on this so much, because there are many ways to introduce subtle changes in your sound, like the full ADSR envelope, like the velocity tracking, like the different modulation options. I think it's just a lot more interesting in terms of its modulation. Ramble. But I almost forgot that the minilogue OG doesn't only have 2 filters, but it has a third analog filter, which is a high-pass filter, which is coupled to the delay circuit right here. But if you turn your delay all the way down and turn this switch to post filter, your original synth signal will go through the high-pass filter, which I'll demonstrate here. Yeah, so you got 3 analog filters in this device, whereas you've got the 1 filter in the minilogue XD, the 1 analog filter. I believe in the effect section you can load different plugins that have some digital filters, but yeah, it's 1 analog filter versus 3 analog filters right here. And while we're here, let's get to the effect section. On the minilogue OG, you only have 1 simple digital delay. Which also is quite noisy. So yeah, there are not a lot of options on this one here, but for what it is, I think the delay is useful. On the minilogue XD, on the other hand, you have a very elaborate effect section, because you can load in all kinds of user plugins, from shimmery reverbs to choruses to amp simulations to different filters. Whatever you like probably is in there. So I can see that that makes for a very appealing argument for the minilogue XD in terms of instant gratification sounds, because throw a reverb on it and it sounds amazing. But if you're using a DAW or an external effects device, you can do a lot more with the OG, I would say, because there are more options. Now let's get to, I think, the last point of this comparison, which is the modulation stick, or whatever you call it. The OG has this little slider right here, which can affect only 1 parameter at a time, whereas the minilogue XD has a 3D joystick, which can affect 2 parameters at a time. In terms of feeling, the OG slider feels quite sturdy and maybe for rougher people, whereas the 3D joystick feels very soft to the touch, so quickly moves. I guess it will make for more subtle changes, but I like the way you can freak the slider here. It's quite nice. So that's up to your personal opinion, which one you prefer, I would say. And now the last point of comparison, the number of presets you can store. In the OG minilogue, you can store 200 patches. In the XD, you can store 500 patches. To me, this doesn't really matter, because you can exchange the patches via USB with your computer anyway and store them there if you like to. So 200 is more than enough for me. And to sum up, The minilogue XD sounds great out of the box. Its digital oscillator is capable of sounds that the minilogue OG would only dream of, and the effects section will make sure that you get to pleasant sounding results very quickly. And this is where I see the main draw for the minilogue XD. Pleasant sounding sounds quickly. The presets are nice, the effects will help you to get there. If you're getting a little bored, throw in a digital oscillator, and that's it. If, on the other hand, you really just want an analog synth and want to learn to tweak an analog synth and maybe have a bit more variety in the parameters, then the minilogue OG is for you. Because it's all kept on the front panel, almost nothing is hidden in menus, and you got more parameters to actually tweak the analog engine than on the XD. I think this is the ideal analog beginner synth. Bang for the buck king, and it's got my stamp of approval. And with that being said, thank you very much for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, don't forget to leave a like, comment down below, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell if you want to see more. I hope to see you next time. Until then, have a great time. Peace.